usually the first miracle of a mission trip for many people is the financial miracle. And I want to talk about that thing that scares a lot of people, so especially if you've never done it, and that is the subject of fundraising. I know a little bit about that. I fundraise for the mission. We're in the middle of raising $4 million. So let me share with you some things I've learned over the years of fundraising. And I would say probably over half of you, this is going to apply to. So let's talk about some best practices. I like the analogy of Joshua chapter 3 because the Israelites were going to go finally conquer the promised land. They get to the Jordan, it's overflowing, they can't cross. And what does God tell them to do? Well, he didn't say pray and wait. He says step in it. And as soon as they stepped into the river, the river parted. And I think that's a wonderful analogy of mission trips, that you are on this call because you took the step of faith, not knowing how you're going to pay for this trip. But I know that when God calls you and you take that step of faith, his provisions will follow. We like the provisions to come first, but oftentimes it requires faith, and then we get to see the miracles. I love the statement, everybody wants to see a miracle, nobody wants to be in a position to need one. Well, that's true financially a lot of times for our trip. So let's talk about some best practices. All right, remember, you're not asking for yourself. One of the things I first had to overcome, I'll never forget, I was going to a meeting to ask someone for, we were in the middle of a big campaign. This was when I first started doing this full time. And I thought, oh no, I'm not ready. I got so busy that morning. I was going to be prayed up over my presentation. I get to the meeting feeling totally unprepared, and I just cried out to God, help. And I sensed the Lord saying, are you raising money for you or for me? And I thought, well, you, Lord. And then it was just like the Lord just said, well, then go and don't be ashamed, don't be afraid, and just ask, because I'm not asking for me. If I'm asking for me, I should be a little embarrassed or timid. But if I'm asking for the Lord, because this can only be accomplished by people helping to support and provide, then there's nothing to be ashamed of, because we are asking for God's kingdom to expand through us, and we need help to do it. Always encourage start with prayer. Reach out to those, whoever comes to mind. It can almost sound cliche-ish. Of course, we're going to pray, but I mean literally pray and ask God to give direction. I've literally had people come to mind that wasn't in my mind, reach out and say, hey, it's funny you contact me today. This just happened. And I've seen many divine appointments just by simply being still, praying and listening to God as I'm praying about how to meet the needs that need to be met financially. However, you have to do your part and ask. It's interesting, the Bible has this tension of God's provision and our responsibility. Lord's Prayer, give us this day our daily bread. We should pray for things we probably don't think about praying for, because we can take care of it ourselves, right? But yet God wants us to live in that kind of dependence. And then later in Scripture, it says a man that doesn't work shouldn't eat. So which is it? Do you pray or do you work? Well, both. That's the way God designed this, where you work with him, walking in the Spirit, and then asking his power. But you do have to ask, and if you have not, because you ask not. Cast a broad net and don't say no for people. Here's an interesting thing that I've seen it so many times personally and with other people. The people that you think are going to fund your mission, if you have to fundraise, they're not going to do it. The people you don't even think are going to give are the ones that are going to provide. I've seen this happen time and time again. So if you start saying no for people, well, they probably won't. Well, they probably won't. Just cast a big net. You'll be amazed at who says yes. And sometimes you'll be surprised by who doesn't respond. So the important thing is that you sow, those who sow sparingly reap sparingly. So cast a big net. Don't say no for people. Let them say it if they're not able to help. Now, do you know this? People want to help, but they're busy. So you need more than just one email or one text or one. The thing is, I don't know how many times this has happened to me over the years, that somebody's doing something. I think I want to help them with it. I forget about it, and then a year later I see them, or I see they went. And it really wasn't that I didn't want to participate. It's just at that moment it slipped. People are busy. So don't just take silence. You're going to send your letter out. You're going to email. You're going to put it on social media. Nothing's going to happen. And you might be tempted to get discouraged thinking nobody wants to help. truth is people are busy, so you have to have follow-up plans. So maybe you email and then send a follow-up text or a call and say, hey, did you see my email or on my social media? So have a multi-layer approach to sharing it with people just because you understand they're busy and that some do want to participate, but you've got to help keep it in front of them. Personalize your public profile. This picture over to the right, I got permission from this dad. This is what a public profile looks like when you create and manage missions. You'll want to put your picture in it. That's Brian there. You can personalize it. And since his family of 4 was going, he also put his wife and his 2 kids for all, because they obviously are pulling from the same donor base. So he made it possible that they could donate to everyone. But you'll want to make sure and use this tool if you're going to fundraise. We also have a fundraising template letter on our website under resources. You're going to find number 4 under important team info is a template and some more details on fundraising. So make use of that. Make sure you're specific about your deadlines. They need to know, hey, by this date, I need to raise 1,000, and by this date, I need to reach this. People need deadlines, so make sure to include that. Know how to fundraise by check. So this is a little different. Most people give online these days, but occasionally, you know, Aunt Martha, she doesn't trust the online and she gives you a check. What do you do with it? Well, first of all, if your donor wants to get a tax deduction, it has to be written to Amazon Outreach and not you personally. Otherwise, it can't be tax deductible. Secondly, they need to put, or you need to put, when they give you a check, your name and your trip name. And here's why. When we get checks in our office, we have no idea who your Aunt Martha is. And so we just, until we find out, we just put it in our general donations because Amazon Outreach fundraises as well. So if we don't know where to put it, it goes into our Faith, Hope, and Love capital campaign. We really appreciate that. But we really want it to go for your trip. But if you don't do that simple thing of putting your name, your trip name on the memo line, and it's written Amazon Outreach, and then you can mail it to our office, give it to your trip leader. I recommend you mail it instead of putting it on them to do that, but that's how you handle checks if they want to get a tax deduction. Make sure you thank your donors. Hopefully, if you've not been before, this is going to begin a mission addiction where you keep going back, and you want to build a core of people that are going to help you because they're blessed and they can't go. You can go, but you don't have the financial blessing, and it's this beautiful way that God puts the two together. But you need to make sure and thank people when they give to you because you're building a relationship. And then make sure when you return, you share stories and pictures with your supporter. Here's what your investment did. Thank you. And then the next time you go, you don't have to be embarrassed. I hadn't talked to them since I asked for money last time. You've been thankful and you've shared the impact that their investment made. So this is how you step into fundraising. Bless you as you step in faith, boldness, and trusting in God because He is going to provide. AmazonOutreach.org. You go to the menu tab up here and click at the very bottom tab as resources. Everything we've been talking about can be found here. So for instance, if you're doing VBS, there's information there. Evangelism, your leader. Team trainings will be here, the videos here. But this is the one that we've been referring to the most, important team information, that drop box there. You want to know how to do the financial support letters, there that is. Ministry captains, I mentioned, you don't know what you're doing and you want to talk to somebody that does. Minor release form. When you get to packing, here's a good list of Portuguese words. So many valuable. You're a doctor. Down here's the pharmacy overview, a formulary with prescriptions. Maybe you're a cardiologist and you haven't prescribed in years. You don't do family practice. Well, this will give you the medicines on the boat and how to prescribe them. So great resource. And then the last one is managed missions. You can always go to managed missions. Just go to managedmissions.com. And just a quick run through. This is going to be what you call your home page. So the trip information, the trip details is here. That's what we basically would consider the home page. That's where you find your information about team meetings. There's a resource link. When your airfare is purchased, your itineraries will be under documents. So On the My Info, this is where you're going to fill out your information. Because we have to have this for about 5 different things. And again, we just don't have the time to hunt down 700 people's information. You're going to make our lives a lot easier. The meetings that we're having, I don't know if your trip leader has put that in there yet, tasks and goals. Fundraising. This is a good way to see where you're at on fundraising as it goes. If you're not fundraising, you can pay for your trip right here or send the check for full amount to Amazon Outreach to avoid the cost of credit cards. But the last thing is the public profile. I mentioned this is your fund. So if you're going to fundraise, you're going to click on this link here, public profile. And you can see there's no public profile here. So I'm going to go down here. I'm going to upload my photo and then I'm going to hit save and publish. And all of a sudden I now have a link that's been created. When I click on it, there's my trip. So anyway, a couple of crash courses on where to find the resources and how to use managed missions. And I think that wraps up. Thank you all for spending this time with us to get ready to serve the forgotten people of the Amazon.